We are on Section 10, and it's entitled Special Relief for Families, and there's a number of different mass family law cases and the like to think about there. We also have on the agenda for Thursday to talk a little bit about Rules 5 and 6, which are rules that are not generally well known, but they are important with respect to both the service of pleadings and then how much time you have to respond to a given pleading. So it's important to take a look at them. We will take a look at them on Thursday. From a practice standpoint, you need to know oftentimes how much time you have to respond to issues. And to obviously respond timely. It's essential if you're going to be in this business. But we're going to look at some family law cases and a little bit of valuation of damages and the like. My guess is some of you have said to yourself, well, I'm never going to do family law. Doesn't interest me or whatever. But the fact is that if your firm is a general practice firm or a firm that does litigation, the likelihood is someone in that firm, if not multiple people, will be dealing with family law issues because people pay for family law cases because they're fighting about some of the most important things to them, their children and their assets. And so oftentimes it is an area that has a significant demand for attorneys. It is at times draining work emotionally. And the likelihood is you will have some exposure to it. And some of you will stay with it and others will say, I have no interest in doing that for any extended period of time. But they're interesting cases to try. There's always a lot of issues with them. But today's first case is actually a wrongful birth case. A lot of times we deal with wrongful death cases as litigators, where we're trying to prove the value of someone's life that's been lost through the wrong of someone else. And so we have some understanding of how those cases get tried. We look at the person's life expectancy, we look at what they were earning, their education and the like, and what their financial value is. And we can come close to putting a dollar value on it. But Burke versus Revo is an interesting case because it asks you to value damages in the event of a wrongful birth. The birth of a child that the parents had attempted to avoid having any more children. And so it's an interesting case of first impression for the Mass court. And so I thought it would be an interesting case to look at as we start to think about how to put monetary value on damages, because in law school, we talk a lot about liability and damages, but at some point when you're trying the case, you've got to start to think about, okay, how do we put in economic terms some of the issues we're dealing with, because at the end of the day you want the jury to come back for you for a dollar value, or you are opposing any attempt to obtain compensation, and you've got to figure out what the evidence would be that would support a minimal or no verdict with respect to damages and the like. So this is a med-mal case. The parents have sued in tort and contract, and they've got claims arising from the birth of a child that was unwanted. Physician had performed a sterilization procedure, which the mother had wanted for reasons founded on economic or financial considerations. They just didn't want any more children. They're too expensive. And the question is, the child's been born, and can they sue to recover for their damages, the cost of raising that child? And so that's the question we've got in the case. From a policy standpoint, I'm wondering first, because I think the judges struggled, and they did definitely struggle with this. Brothers and sisters torment each other, kids on the playground torment each other. I read this case, I think of the child at some point hearing, Mom and Dad didn't want you so much they sued when you were born. That's some pretty heavy baggage to carry for an extended period of time, no? I mean, it doesn't seem like great public policy to put that on the shoulder of some little kid, no? Or, hey, it's just about money, the kid will get over it, he'll now have money for summer camp and all the rest of it? Or is this just bad public policy that, listen, stuff happens.
The court said they can get over the whole, my mama didn't want me.
They can get over that. So that's just nothing to worry about. There's no public policy issues here with respect to saying that if they can prove liability. And by the way, the liability is a pretty easy case. Do we agree? Somehow the surgeon promised them, at least that's the testimony, that there'd be no more children. My guess is that's the last promise of that sort that any physician doing this procedure provided, which seems like a pretty foolish promise to begin with. But nonetheless, we can get past liability relatively easy because that seems to be the evidence. So let's go. Do you all agree, or do you think no? Despite what he said, they still should have known things can happen. But that doesn't appear consistent with the evidence, right? Go ahead.
I would suspect they probably read and signed something that indicated it wasn't 100% in addition to whatever he told them.
But don't you think, and I agree, Matt, that should have been what took place. 1990, it's not that long ago. You would think that the consent would have said nothing is foolproof and things can happen. But if that were the case, then the doctor has a better defense than I saw present here, right? Is that, well, we didn't promise it would be foolproof.
Didn't the court find evidence that, the trial court find evidence that he hadn't informed them of the risk?
Well, he hadn't informed them properly of the risk that they could reconnect and that they could have further children. I think that was, in fact, the evidence, and I don't think I don't think he truly disputed it to the point where we have credible evidence that says their claim of of a guarantee procedure isn't likely, not just likely. I didn't see any significant evidence to the contrary, because we really went right to damages. And I think you're right that the judge is simply accepting as true their version of the events as to what they were informed about. And so off we go to the damages. But can you value something like this? Because, and does it make, first of all, does it make a difference that they didn't want the child for economic reasons as opposed to concerns about the child's well-being? Suppose parents had attempted to have children in the past. Those children were either born with various birth defects that the parents weren't willing to continue to try and shoulder that obligation, or they couldn't carry the child to term for whatever reason. Does it make a difference whether it was financial reasons as opposed to concerns about the child's safety?
The court made that distinction.
The court did make that distinction, right? Why? Why do you think they did?
Because there's no damages if you have a healthy child.
All right. If you weren't concerned about the finances, but you were concerned about the child's well-being, and you then had a healthy child, well, then you've suffered no damages because, in fact, you've received a benefit as opposed to a burden, at least if that's the way they saw it. So if a client came into your office, would you tell them, well, first of all, it would depend on why you had the sterilization procedure, whether you have a claim or not. If you had it because you didn't want the financial burden, we might have a suit. If you had it because you were concerned about the child's ultimate well-being and you have a healthy child, you don't have a claim. Would you tell them that? Because that would almost seem to encourage them to fabricate their reasons why they had the sterilization procedure to begin with.
I think it would be kind of easy to figure out, because all you have to do is see if they've had miscarriages or any of the sort like that, or you just ask them outright, why are you, and if they tell you economic reasons, then
But you ask them outright before you tell them what the implication of their answer might be? Because this has to be $1 million case, right? So do you tell them first?
You have to.
Tell them
No,
first?
you have to ask them first.
You have to
Just
ask them
to
first?
cover your own
So
back.
I'm going to get an answer before they know what the ramifications of their answer are, because you know what the answer is, right? And by the way, it may not be a miscarriage situation. Suppose there was, the genetic defect that might be present that they know they have and they're concerned about it carrying forward, or it might not be as easily as, well, we miscarried a bunch of times, or we have a child and the child has whatever it is that we don't want to shoulder any longer. Charlie, what were we going to say?
Depends what kind of lawyer you want to be.
Well, what does that mean? Because I'm not trying to suggest, and I know it sounds like I might be trying to suggest it's shifty, but do they have a right to know the implication of their answer before they answer? Because you're not their adversary, you're their advocate, right? So where are you going with the rest of it?
Well, I think if you ask them the question first and they say, oh, it's because of not economic reasons, and then you say, okay, you don't have a suit, just go to the next lawyer and tell them it's economic reasons.
So they'll shop it around too.
Oh yeah, people. Of course.
So would you tell them?
You could.
Would you tell them what the ramifications of their answer are before they answer? I mean, it's a common question for those that are doing criminal law as well. Before you tell me what happened, let me tell you what potential defenses you have here, and then we can talk about what you say took place.
But why would you take that case? Because if discovery comes out where that they have this genetic bag, the defense is going to bring it up, and there goes your chances of winning come down, and you're not going to get paid unless they...
Well, because I'm not so sure it's as cut and dried as we sit here and think. I've got 3 healthy kids. They are very expensive, right? And so when you say, I don't want any more kids for finances, I don't necessarily need all the rest of it to say, we're done, right? So, I mean, you could say financial reasons, but also concern, we're older, whatever you want to say. I could go one route or the other, right? So, tell me which way is better. Because if someone else will pay for little Johnny's daycare and camp and school and college, yeah, he can live with us. Go ahead.
I don't see why you couldn't have them come in for like an hour-long consultation and say, first we're just going to give you like 15 minutes of the law in this area, and then you tell me your story, and then I'll kind of try to tell you how it applies to the law.
So you're going to tell them the law first. You're going to give them the ramifications of their answer before they answer.
Yeah.
I think you can. You're fine with telling them what the law is first, and then ask them. It's up to them. If they want to lie to you, they can lie to you. But they'll also have to know that if they lie, there's a less chance that they'll recover. But also,
And because Jim's point is right as well. What evidence do you have to support what you're telling me, right? At the end of the day, you can tell me one thing, but if they're going to blow us out of the water 18 months in, maybe we do have a hotter conversation right now.
Yeah, that's where I was going, because it's like if you're giving them kind of, or suggesting to them, wait, let me tell you the ramifications of your answer, it's kind of suggesting them to, whether it be the truth or not, to say something favorable to them.
Correct.
So that just goes, as the lawyer, it's kind of like, do you want to encourage, I guess, potentially your client to be lying to you, and like you said, later down the line, it comes out in discovery or whatever that they are lying, then doesn't that make you look bad?
How's it going to come out? I mean, if you think about it, right? Most people, if they're going to have a vasectomy or some other form of sterilization procedure, it's because we don't want to have kids anymore, right? I mean, I would assume that has to be the answer. Otherwise, well, why? Okay, so then the only question is, well, why don't you want to have kids anymore? We have enough, they're too expensive, or, there's medical issues that we're concerned about. So all of that could get a little flexible depending on what you tell me the better reason, the stronger reason should be. Because my guess is a lot of those are on the table. A lot of those are in the mix, and the question is, are you just asking me which is the dispositive one? Because I'm not so sure there is one necessarily.
Well, regardless of which way they go as well, they also talk about how, and you just stated that the reason why they're getting this procedure is because they don't want to have a baby. So the fact that they actually have the baby, you're still in pain and suffering for the 9-month term that you're going through. They talk about emotional distress and things like that, that you can also sue for damages. So
And so the other part of this I worry about too is, so we're making a distinction between those that would have a healthy child and those that have a child with some problems. That's okay by all of you two? Because a healthy child, okay, maybe you get a plus, but if you have a child that has any problems whatsoever, maybe that's different. So we're now placing a different value on those children depending on what their strengths or weaknesses are. That's okay? Huh?
Wasn't the child in this case healthy though, and they still went with economic reasons?
Yes. Yes. Because I think they are saying that if the child's in some way unhealthy, then you have a stronger claim. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's okay to value them differently, basically because, I mean, in some cases, if the kid does have genetic problems, they are going to cost more to raise. So I think in some ways, it's okay to sort of balance it.
There'll be additional damages.
Right.
Well, but I thought, to some extent, though, you guys were having a little trouble last week when we talked about this genetically superior race we're creating. And so now if a child has some problems, oh, geez, well, that's easy. Now you get to sue a healthy kid, whatever the hell that means. And we know what it means generally, but I'm not trying to be that cynical. But children are far from perfect, right, Rasha? Well, no, we know that. So to some extent, I mean, that's not worrisome either, that we'll value them differently depending on their strengths and weaknesses. By the way, what cuts against my whole argument is here, so Michael, you're saying otherwise the doctor gets a free pass on all of this? Doctor screws up and says, geez.
I still think he has he had a contract with you that guaranteed, so you're just not going to get the damages you would for the economic value there.
But so what do I get for damage? Because what Charlie said, I get 9 months pain and suffering.
emotional distress
Well, what's the emotional distress for?
due to could be the probable consequence of a breach of the duty the defendant owed directly to the plaintiff. So the doctor owed a duty and obviously didn't.
But so would that be, that's limited to that 9 month period too, or does that extend during my raising of the child?
Well,
Make an argument that you can make an argument too that it affects how you interact with doctors from the future. You don't trust them anymore.
You could, well, you're going to be able to sell that to me? So never in your life again are you going to be able to trust a doctor?
I think you still can get economic damages. You still didn't want a child.
So, okay, well, that is what the case is saying, right? Let's talk about that aspect of the case. So if I didn't want a child for economic reasons, I get the doctor to pay to raise that child?
They should.
Well, that's what the case says, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Well, why are you shaking your head like that can't be?
Can you imagine how many children they would have to pay for life?
Well, but that's why my guess is the guarantee is not the way to go in the future. But that is what the court is saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's
So what does that mean? That means everything? Doesn't it? So daycare, sneakers, food, diapers. No.
Milk?
They're
How
probably
much
average for the child.
insurance policies usually cover for a doctor in a similar circumstance as this?
My guess is this could be it's going to be north of $1 million, and it's likely should be somewhere between 5 and 25, because you're potentially dealing with wrongful death cases, and so you've got to have, there's probably a policy, there's a balloon coverage, and the likelihood is the hospital has significant coverage as well. So there likely will be coverage for whatever number you're going to be able to come up with through the policy, simply because the exposure is so large. Charlie's question is a good one, because sometimes, obviously, when you guys are attorneys, you're going to have limits on your malpractice policies. And depending on the limits, obviously you pay less for your premiums. But depending on the type of work you do, you may need and depending on, by the way, how you drive, same thing with your auto insurance, right? You may need higher limits on those vehicles than you presently have. And if you exceed the limits of the policy, then you're not going to cover the entirety of it. But surgeons and doctors, they've as a general matter, assuming you've got a decent physician, they've got coverage that should handle a claim of this nature.
Well, they talk about too, covering the cost for the duration of the child's life. I was curious, a child that was born last year, the cost for a middle-income couple to raise them until they're only 18 is $250,000.
And that seems low, frankly.
That's way
Half
low.
a million to raise a child.
What?
It's like $500,000 to raise a
Yeah,
child.
250 sounds low to 18 when you think about. Well, let me ask you about that.
That's the 18, that's not included college, that's not included.
I hear you, but 250 to 18 is probably low. I think.
Half a million.
That's,
I think. So what's that? So what's 18 divided by 250? What's that? 15 a year?
I just saw the news the other day that if a woman decides to breastfeed instead of buying milk, they save like $23,000.
Oh, I'll bet. Formula's very expensive. That's why they steal it out of the stores.
Yeah, it's $30 a can.
Is it that much now? Okay, $30 a can. Seriously? Wow.
Well, like 28.
Okay, same thing.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm not.
Can you imagine?
Okay, let me just look at page 768 because I really want you to think about what the number is here, and since you're the plaintiff's lawyer, what you put into it. It says, the judge below recognized that damages properly would include the cost of the unsuccessful sterilization procedure, costs directly flowing from the pregnancy, the wife's lost earning capacity, medical expenses of the delivery, and care following the birth, the cost of care for the other children while the wife was incapacitated, the cost of the second sterilization procedure and any expenses flowing from that operation, and the husband's loss of consortium. We would add the wife's pain and suffering in connection with the pregnancy and birth and with the second sterilization procedure. We also see, as Charlie pointed out, no reason why the plaintiff should not recover for emotional distress they sustained as a result of the unwarranted pregnancy. But then, at the top of 769, the plaintiffs go on to say what they want is the cost of raising the child. Under normal tort and contract principles, that cost is both a reasonably foreseeable and a natural and probable consequence of the wrongs that the plaintiffs allege. The question is whether there's any public policy consideration to which we would give effect to limit traditional tort and contract damages. We conclude that there is none as to parents who have elected sterilization for economic reasons. So does that mean the whole shebang? Diapers, formula, sneakers, daycare, private schooling,
Dance lessons.
dance lessons? No, seriously, right? Dance. What do you say? No to dance lessons?
He said it's not.
Soccer camp?
Those are extra things.
buy them their car,
Kids in.
gas.
Wait a minute, you can't have dance lessons in soccer camp, so the other kids got to go to dance lessons in soccer camp and these kids
Why
don't?
should my child be deprived of that?
No, well, your child, well, would it matter whether the other kids in that family did those activities?
I think it would, but
So what if they did?
shouldn't the damages be what an average child would cost, not what a fancy child would
Don't
cost?
go to dance class.
Well, what
The
is
fancy
that?
child costs, call them a fancy child.
Wait, you gotta speak up, I can't hear you,
What do you consider an average child?
Like, stuff like ballet lessons.
Food and water.
Ballet lessons is an average child, but dance class
No,
isn't?
those are extra things.
Oh.
Dance class,
What about sports camps?
how many sports camps?
What if he's an athlete?
But you pay for that stuff.
I never went.
What?
You pay for that stuff if you're divorced.
Went outside.
I mean, my husband's divorced, I have a stepdaughter, and we pay for half of dance lessons. I mean, that's what she's doing, we're paying for it. So, I mean, I would think that would be included.
But I think that's different
Like,
though.
as a child, it's not their
That's
fault that they were
different.
born.
Well, what's different about it?
Because that's a divorce, and her stepdaughter is used to that already. So when the divorce happens, it continues. But
But
this
she
is
took, I mean, she was taking snowboarding was new, but we had to pay for it. I mean, like, there's stuff that's new, but you have to pay for it. The kids-
Yeah, there's a new activity. They don't just do the same thing. So they should live like Oliver while the other kids live this, this really great existence. That's the plan? No. What if the other children are doing these activities? Isn't there some support then to say, why should this child live a different existence than the other children in that family? To me, you know,
I mean,
huh?
you're gonna go by this family, this kid's gonna get screwed because they have no money. They didn't want a kid for economic reasons.
And so,
They're doing it by a normal child, the court says.
well, what do you mean normal child? Because I'm wondering what a normal child is these days.
I'm assuming they're having how much it costs a kid to go to school, play sports, what the average kid plays, 2.5 sports, and they got all
So
these
the other kids in that family can go to private school, but this kid's going to public school.
Not that family, they're not going to.
Well, no. I think you're wrong on that. I think you're wrong on that. I could say that we didn't want any more children for economic reasons because they're wicked expensive, and we're done. Okay. But we have money, and we have money for the other kids. The point is that I don't want another $500,000 to $1 million expense. I'm done. It's still economic reasons, but that doesn't mean I have to live like a pauper for the rest of my life. Maybe the choice was, we're done because we want to spend money on other things. So if those other kids are in private school, this kid does, so they go to private school. No, you've got to go to public because Dr. Jones won't pay for private school. No. If the damages are to raise that child till 18, why isn't it whatever it's going to take? And I'm not saying the rest of the family drove a Yugo, but now this kid gets a Cadillac. If the rest of the family was driving a Lexus, then shouldn't the kid get a Lexus?
No.
Why not?
Because
But
the
then
whole
the
argument
public
is,
policy, then if it happens to another family on welfare, so that kid's only gonna get government cheese.
but isn't the whole argument that they can't?
It's true. It's true, though. Who judges the standard? Right?
Shouldn't the standard be what the family standard of living was?
So-
And that's because we would want to have a similar lifestyle for those other children. Or let me take this example, if I can. So why should that child be living to the government cheese? We've got someone who is obligated to raise this child, has the financial means to do so. Why shouldn't that child live a reasonable existence? And so I guess I am advocating for both, that those that are in the Lexus family will get a Lexus, and those that are below a certain line will still get a better than that family existence. Why not? The doctor's the one that messed up. We didn't want a child for financial reasons. Now it's time to pay. And by the way, you sort of left off the whole school issue, but I wasn't kidding. Private school, college, because,
Big difference.
well,
In price.
there's going to be a big difference all along the way. Go ahead.
So if you take that example, I don't agree that it should be, the damages should be for that child, whatever that family is used to. Because like in his example, I wouldn't say that's a reasonable, just because people are brought up on, government assistance, that's not a reasonable way to live. There should
Okay.
be like a median, however much it costs in a certain geographical location to raise a child. That's what the damages should be, as opposed to what the family is used to, because then you're gonna have two different extremes. You're gonna have, the family who's, affluent, well off, doing all these extracurricular activities that aren't necessary, and then you're gonna have other kids that, aren't used to the bare minimum.
But when you say they aren't necessary, so the two older, because you said, the kid will get past this. So the two older siblings get sort of a gold brand in everything, and the new kid, who mom and dad didn't want, sort of has to cobble together in existence.
But if you have that type of economic status, to an extent, you're really not going to need somebody else to pay for your.
It's not need now, it's justice. It's you promised one thing, you delivered something else, now you've got to pay. But by the way, you're worried about providing different economic compensation on wrongful birth cases. We do it on wrongful death cases all the time, right? It is based on economic status. It's based on earning power. It's based on education. It's based on what your lifestyle before. That's how we value what the loss is.
But there's
For
a
one wrongful death case could be worth $10 million. Someone of the very same age and gender, maybe it's worth less than $1 million. Maybe it's worth less than $500,000.
This court distinguished that too, saying wrongful death is speculative, where this is easily calculated.
Okay, but how easily? Because it seems like we're struggling with it a little bit here.
I think the statistics are out there of what it costs to raise a kid and the average kid and what they do, and that's what the court's going to use.
But that's fair then? It's an average kid, even though this wasn't a family that lived an average lifestyle. These are children that went to private school, that go to private college. Oh, that went to college at all, by the way, because this said 18. No college?
Well, she says she can't afford it, that's why she's suing.
Well, okay, but so the doctor will pay for college too.
Yeah, but the average kid doesn't pay for their, they pay for their own college. Parents don't hand you the money anymore, so you can't really argue that that's an average payment.
Well, but in the divorce situation, if you wanted to look at that, in the divorce situation, there will oftentimes be orders from the court as to how that college will be paid for.
We're paying for it now.
Okay. between those divorced spouses. So it is an order that the court has very comfortable as a general matter providing for. And you're right, with the expense of college now, it's not something that's automatic and not the parents can contribute at all. But again, we've got a pretty deep pocket here who, but for his breach of contract and tort, we wouldn't have to worry about this at all.
Will the court ever set up any kind of like a trust for the benefit of the kids, so it's not just a windfall for the parents that they might squander?
That's actually a really good question, Matt. Not likely. However, for settlements for minors, the court would have to approve. First of all, the court would generally have to approve the settlement for the minor, and you would want them to, because otherwise the minor, like any other minor entering into a contract, could void it at the time of majority, even if the money's all gone. So the court would approve it, and perhaps as part of that approval process, you would want a trust established or some oversight of those funds, or provision that it go into trust till a certain age for the child. The problem is with the situation here is they're arguing is we need some of the money to raise the child now. So they won't on their own create the trust. You could present a mechanism for trying to get approval through that. And again, here it would be likely through the probate court, which would be able to do something like that.
Would the insurer do that, or the defendant say, we don't want to just give it to the plaintiffs, we want it to be in trust?
What I would try and structure under something like that, if I had your concerns, and I would have your concerns if I were defending, is perhaps something more along the line of an annuity that would pay X number of dollars out per year, if we could sort of come up with a reasonable value that we thought it would take to raise that child, and then the annuity being paid out over a period of time. What you would want to make sure, though, is that whoever provides the annuity is financially solvent, so that in 5 years from now, they're still going to be around. And then the other part of that, the concern would be there may be taxes due on it sooner rather than later if they actually taxed you on the actual cash value of it. And so you'd want to make sure that there's sufficient upfront payments that would be able to pay for the taxes on it. So, you know, if you do structure a deal, there are all sorts of other problems on the back end that Matt's pointing out that you'd still have to deal with. Because otherwise, at the end of the day, when this child turns into an adult, you don't want them to come back and say, where's my money? I'm voiding the agreement. I never got what I was supposed to get, and we start all over again.
So what if
Go ahead.
the doctor woke up one morning crazy and said he wants visitation rights?
Well, you know what? Let me ask you. Let me go further with some questions like that. Plaintiff has an obligation to mitigate their damages, right? We saw last week that just the genetic material is worth a lot of money. Why don't they just give the kid up? then they don't have the obligation to raise the child. I mean, generally, a plaintiff has an obligation to mitigate the damages. You didn't want them. You don't want to pay for them. Someone wants this child. Someone may want this child healthy or not healthy. So if you want to keep them, how come I have to pay to raise them? And if you don't really want this child, there are people out there who we know would, because we just read all these cases last week with people paying a fortune, undergoing these dangerous medical procedures to have a child. Well, why shouldn't they have to mitigate their damages like any other case?
Would that be considered forcing someone to give their child away?
They didn't want it anyway.
You didn't want them. That's what you told us.
They could have aborted the pregnancy.
Could have aborted the pregnancy. But you told me last week when we discussed that you can't force someone to do that. But okay, we won't make you do that. By the way, if she had aborted the pregnancy, that would have been damage. She would have had damages, whatever the cost of the medical procedure is. No? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what about mitigation of damages? And what about, Henry, everyone wants to know, the doctor get visitation here? I mean, he's not a blood relative, but he's the one picking up the freight. I'm not sure he wants visitation, but he may want to make life a little more difficult.
Yeah.
But there's no obligation under these circumstances to mitigate? Because my guess is that would probably put an end to this as well. Because as I understand it, the number could be a really high number before we're done, depending on which set of damages we want to take a look at. And I wouldn't be so ready to reject that the kid could be getting the Cadillac of raising here. If the other children are living a lifestyle, I don't see how you could suggest, I don't see how the court could not accept the damage argument that this is not going to be the cost of raising an average child. These people live in existence that this child should get to go to Disney every other year and ski in the winter or whatever other, do all the sports camps. By the way, sports camps, I mean, that's pretty normal activity these days, isn't it? The dance camp. I mean, whatever it's going to be, they don't go out and play in the neighborhood. They do organized activities that cost money. By the way, well, cell phone? Doctor going to pay for the cell phone too, I assume?
Cell phone's not necessary.
Well, when you say not necessary, I'm not sure what that means. Like you're.
They have nothing? No
Sticks.
ballet?
Sticks
I
and
have a
rocks.
question though.
What do you offer them?
The whole mitigating damages,
Yes.
wouldn't that require this family to reduce all this stuff we're talking, saying the kids have, like the dance lessons, the mini vacations, that's mitigating damages, you cut back on all those things.
So wait a minute though. So now because of the doctor's breach of contract and tort, our whole family has to suffer? Because I thought that was sort of the point of the court's decision. If this was economic reasons, you just didn't want to be adversely financially affected, then you have a claim. And so I know we're thinking, oh, it's going to make us poor, but suppose it's just that we don't want to spend $1 million on a fourth child, a fifth child, whatever the number is. That's an economic reason, isn't it? Kids are expensive and aggravating, right? Well, I want to get to the other part of it too, though. The court says an offset for the credit. There is some value, right? They're aggravating, but they're fun to have around, right?
When they do chores.
Well, even when they don't do chores, they enrich our lives, right? So, what's that worth?
Well,
Because I get a credit, right? If you're going to say that I've got to pay, well, people have them even though they're expensive, so they must find that there's value to them. We saw this last group of people with the surrogacy take extraordinary efforts to try and have a child, right? So they must feel that there is a value beyond financial to them and the lives in which they then have. And I'm not saying doing the chores or taking care of them in their old age, because if you're counting on that, you're probably in deep shit too, right? So let's say that there's value. Well, you got to pay me for that, don't you?
Well, this court said that the benefits of having children did not outweigh the economics.
Did not outweigh the economics. Well, wait a minute, I'm not so sure they did say that.
The very fact that a person has sought medical intervention to prevent him or her
You can speak up.
prevent him or her from having a child demonstrates that for that person, the benefits of parenthood did not outweigh the burdens, economic and otherwise, of having a child.
Okay, but that's because they said it was for economic reasons. They said it didn't outweigh. But I'm looking at page 771 here, and the first full paragraph says, a substantial number of jurisdictions have allowed recovery of the cost of rearing a normal child to adulthood, offset, however, by the benefits that the parents receive in having a normal, healthy child.
Emotional gains converted into a dollar value.
So that's right. So how much you kicking back here?
How do you convert an emotional gain?
And when the,
How do you? Listen, we could talk about his dog, right? Let's value, huh?
Don't get him started.
No, but seriously, and it's not even a child, he can't talk, right? But does that dog enrich your life?
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, right? And my children do too. Well, we're gonna have to measure it though. So what? How much? $100 a day? $50 a day? $1,000 a month? Just figure out a number, because there has to be some value.
Jim is priceless.
that's right. My dog is priceless.
Jim's dog might be priceless, but I bet he's going to value it if he can get an offset against what he has to pay. And that's what we're talking about here. The doctor is entitled, it's saying there's a credit here on the back end. And so now, listen, you somehow are able to value the wrongful birth of a healthy child. Now tell me what they're worth for the days they make you smile, or the days you're down in the dumps and you go in and he or she is there.
I think that's too speculative.
The doctor can't get a credit, but we can figure out all the economic liabilities attached to it, but there's no way we could ever value the smile they put on our face.
I think it's a lot harder to. I think it's a lot harder to put it in perspective. I'm not saying it's impossible. I think it's a lot harder to say what the emotional gain converted to a dollar is than how much it would cost to raise a child.
So somehow you can value the frown, the emotional distress. That we can do economically, but the smile on the other side, no, that's just impossible to value, so the doctor doesn't get a credit. That's the way you lawyers work?
I don't think. I'm just saying it's hard to put it. It's a lot harder.
I don't disagree,
on that.
but so how would you value it?
But how do you? What if the kid turns out like
Hey, devil.
a serial killer or something?
Become the next Bill Gates.
Well, but
It's gonna be even more expensive.
So much
So
for
if
the
the
credit
kid-
while you get
Yeah.
that.
well, but to you, the kid has value, even if at some point they turn out to be
The devil.
the devil, right? No? No?
Well, you
Can't
could,
go
yeah.
by him.
Huh? No, I can't go by him. No, we cannot. But so wait a minute though. I mean, because even, Jerry Remy's picking up a lot of flack now for his child. But my guess is that, well, he couldn't, right? Still his child, still loved him, still couldn't turn away despite seeing the train wreck that was happening. I mean, that's the bond, right? And so there's still, even at this stage, and it's hard to say that it's a net positive at this point, but most of us would put a net positive on the relationship we have with our children. So now you got to do it financially. You chose to have them. You chose so it's got to be worth something. And a per diem argument doesn't usually work, but $100 a day? My kid's got to be worth more than his dog, doesn't he?
Someone breaks in your house.
God, I'd rather have your dog than any of my kids. But so what? So there's got to be a value, because the court says there's an economic value. So tell me how you would even come close to approaching it.
Well, the state already does that with foster children. They have a formula where they pay foster parents a certain amount per day. if the child has a higher need. they
But
call-
that's the first end, right? Isn't that what,
So,
that's the doctor's part?
what-
That's the part the doctor should pay, is sort of the per diem for basic sustenance, as Everald would like to go with.
I guess you're probably going into social sciences and research to see how much satisfaction the average parent gets out of having a kid and try to get it from a credible source. That's what I heard.
No idea. Well, I mean, the fact that you have another person carrying on your bloodline, that's gonna be some monetary value, but again, I have no idea how much that's worth.
Well, so the doctor doesn't get a credit, but he has to pay, because the court says we can do that. We can get a credit. $10,000 a year, would you give me that?
Depends what you.
Depends on what you're making.
Well, and that is what it is. You're just looking to figure out what as long as there's a net gain. Because I'm almost thinking that if many people have children, despite how expensive they are, whether we want to pick a number between $250 and $5, we must think that there's more value to having them than not. No? Because we know they're damn expensive, but a lot of us choose to have them nonetheless. So we must think that the value exceeds their cost. No?
You make it sound like they should be paying the doctor.
I'm wondering. I'm wondering, Jonathan, whether, and goes back to them making the distinction. If you have a healthy child, you don't have the additional burden of medical care and whatever else you need to be. I am a little concerned with using the term healthy, because I'm not sure, I would say it different. No child is 100% perfect. So I think depending on what the medical needs might be, I think would be a better way to approach it. But if most see the value as greater than the cost, and I would think social science might tell us that. So,
But in this case, they didn't want a child. So that economic has to outweigh the value. Because they did this for a specific reason economically. And now that they're having one, yeah, they're going to love the kid, but still.
but so now they do want them.
Yeah, they're getting paid.
Well,
I feel like after a certain point, you can't put a monetary value on a person, because then you develop that bond. Like once the child's there, it's there. You're gonna,
Once it's
like, I
born,
guess the
that
value
person
the value of having the child is gonna outweigh
So would you tell the doctor to stop
the
paying?
detriment. But
okay, so done. Then we're done.
Yeah.
no, but
So you get the first 9 months of aggravation that you wouldn't have had to go through, but once from there on out, it's an offset.
Maybe give the money back.
That's
it doesn't seem right. But it's like that's like just saying, oh well, then you shouldn't even want your child. If you didn't want to have them once they're there, then you shouldn't. Like it doesn't make sense.
well, but you just described it, that once they're there, you've got a bond with them that you can't break, and that is enormous, well, you didn't say it, but enormously valuable, right? So now the benefit does offset the cost. Either that or you still don't want it, and then you should mitigate your damages, because that's a bad burden to leave on some kid, is that, okay, you can sleep under the stairwell, but that's it.
That's what you pay.
And no sports camp or dance camps, as Everald sees it. Let me ask you about the next point that I found interesting in this case. O'Connor, Nolan, and Lynch wrote the dissent. 3 Irish Catholics.
I like the dissent.
Justice Lynch is one of our trustees, as a matter of disclosure. Justice Nolan has 8 kids of his own. I don't know about O'Connor. Do you think, and I'm wondering about this as a general matter, do you think that their likely religious views influenced their decision here? You do?
Well, I think this case does boil down to worldview, because the human life is inherently valuable. It's the human worth and dignity of every individual, and I think that's why it's very different. This case is, you can't compare this to a wrongful death, because a death is a loss, and you're putting a value on that loss. Here, you have a living, breathing human being who has inherent value and dignity, and you're putting a value on. I mean, the ramifications of these children, of being unwanted, I mean, I'm going to represent them when they start to sue for emotional
The parents for the
distress.
emotional
Yes.
distress of this case, when they're sitting in law school someday and saying, "Burr, burr, burr." So, go ahead. You wouldn't allow recovery then?
I'm having a really hard time with it. Because when I read the dissent, I said, all right, well, when I read this, I'm like, all right, the doctor was negligent, he didn't, whatever. But I don't think the doctor should be responsible for the next 18 years. I don't. If they really, really don't, it's unfortunate that they didn't, that they had the child they didn't want, they took steps to prevent it, but now they have a living, breathing human being, and if they really, really don't want that child, then let someone else take care of it.
Who wants
The
a child?
doctor should not be responsible for the next 18 years, and that is bad public policy to force these parents to take care of this kid, or have these parents take care of the kid because of the incentive of the money.
Of the financial gain
That is
now?
very bad public policy, and very bad for these kids.
But now you're saying that the only reason they haven't keeping this kid is for the money.
No, well, that could be. Some people would do that.
Well,
And it could not be though. So
Right, I mean,
Then if
They
they
just
don't
wanna
want
get-
it, why are they keeping it?
But then you also
Because they
run into
had
the
it.
problem now that through no fault of their own, they have a child and what, they have to give them up now? Now you run into the problem, well, now you have a child that's your own and you're not taking care of them, someone else's. That also poses a problem for people, so there's no easy fix.
Yeah, but nothing in medicine's 100%.
well, but in that's what
guaranteed it though.
that's what he said. But I'm sure, like he said, that's the last time that ever happens again. What about? To what extent do you think their religious views likely influence their legal decision here? And do you think that is something that affects judges? Go ahead.
Well, actually, I'm still perplexed why, even though they didn't want a child in the first place, they would actually carry it to term, because there were options available: adoption, abortion. It sounds cold, but at the same time,
They didn't want it.
They what?
They didn't want it.
Right. What I'm saying is maybe that may have influenced their decision. Maybe, I don't know the religion of the parents, but maybe that's kind of factored into their decision on having a child. But I'm still at the same point. I'm still perplexed why they actually went forward. Because I'm trying to find the page here. There was a section here that says even though that where is it? I think it was on 508. That even though the doctor would still be liable for damages, even if they did abort.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I looked at too. And then I'm wondering, thinking it all together, did they look at the windfall at the end? Did they look at the financial windfall from the doctor and say, but this might be a better idea as opposed to getting out early, so to speak? But even if they did get out early, I think there was a little sentence in here, or provision, where they would allow them at least some damages on the outset.
Couldn't you not want any more children for financial reasons, but nonetheless end up getting pregnant and now not want to terminate, not want to give that child up? I mean, to some extent, now we have a child, as we might see it, and it's not something we favored, but
You're not gonna part with it, you're not.
but I'm not going to give it to a stranger, and I'm not necessarily.
How many children are actually planned? Martin, I have 4. None of them I set out to have.
Barbara.
You know.
Got to stay off the wine, Barbara.
I was going to say captain, but you know. Captain.
Hard stuff, all right.
That's tequila for me.
Okay. No, but
But there is,
does it bother you, or is it just acceptable that if their religion might color their actual decision? Because, well, that's it. That's the question. Go ahead.
It bothers me. I think I'm not religious, and I think that it scares me to think that judges take their religion into judge other person's life. If they're making decisions, and like if I'm in front of a judge and I'm getting judged and they're using their religion to guide their decision, I think that's really unfair. I don't just subscribe to the same beliefs that they do.
Do you think, though, that our religious upbringing probably, to some extent, helps to form our personal views of certainly some matters?
Abortion's a huge, abortion's
A lot of them, even if they're like subconscious, like you don't think about it, but you know, like when you say something's right or wrong in society, it's usually boils down to like your upbringing, and that's usually like some, whether it's no religion or some form of religion, it all commingles.
Well, do you think that judges that somehow shut down their own personal views when they've got a case like this or other cases? I mean, it'd be nice to think they put on a black robe and that they have all the wisdom in the world and free of bias, but I don't know whether that's likely, and especially it just seems funny to me. I look at these three names, knowing the backgrounds of these judges, and I think in part, whether they recognize it or not, that to some extent, not just their personal views, but likely I think a couple of them are BC people as well. So it's not just that they went to church occasionally, that they had some level of religious education influence, even in their higher education as well.
But they do cite.
But there is supposed to be a separation as well, right?
But they do cite in here in the dissent, at the time, recent statute change, where they talk about, I don't know the page it's on because I have a different printout, but it says it's the policy of this Commonwealth to direct its efforts to the strengthening and encouragement of family life for the protection and care of children. So they
Page 775 in ours. But so, go ahead, so they're citing the law
Yeah.
that support the views of the case. Well, let me ask you that, when we say, that we have blue laws in Massachusetts, their origin is more religious in nature than civil. So our religion affects the statutes that are passed in the legislature as well.
Oh, I think this one was passed in '88.
The 111?
Yeah, I think that was a shift with.
Yeah, but do you not think that even in '88, our religious organizations, that in significant part, attempt to influence legislation?
I think it was more so then than now.
More then than now?
So,
I don't know.
Really? Isn't part of the mess in Congress caused by sort of the fractured, different groups that want to influence the legislation in some way? Matt, what were we going to say?
I was going to say, I think even if the justices were looking at the interests of the state, having an extra citizen, that's extra revenue at some point down the line, so that's a positive for the state. It's not a negative thing. So public policy, religion aside, is going to push in favor of not awarding the wrongful birth damage awards.
But what if he goes to jail? Then now the state's pay. Yeah, he's a burden now.
But on average, I mean, a state that's losing population is losing revenue, is losing a lot. And a state that's gaining is gaining representation in Congress, gaining a stronger economy.
The dissent also talks about how other states, they, for policy reasons, say, listen, we're not going to permit this. And so they do have other support beyond that religious piece that may be present here.
Plus,
But go ahead.
well, I know because I was working for DSS at the time, but, in the early 80s, there was a lot of big upheaval with the state child protection system. And
Not like now.
it was worse. But yeah, it all cycles around. But so maybe I think that's where that policy and that change to the statute came in with the strengthening of families, and so maybe they were kind of in that headspace.
Well, it's nice language, but what's it mean, as you point out, that, in '88, we had problems with DSS, and in 2014, we had problems with, what's it now called, DCF, so we've changed the name, but not a lot has changed with the way we protect some children as well.
Do we know,
Go ahead.
do we know how much they got? I was trying to find it. Actual monetary value.
I don't know. I've got a note here off on the side, but I think it's my own math. I had a note of 400,000, but I think that's just my own note when I was doing a little scribbling as to what I could see potentially them coming up with. Why though? Just curious to see what the number was. Well, the number, whatever the number's going to be, it has to have an offset for the value. And I know you're struggling with the offset for the value, but the court's pretty clear, and certainly the dissent's argument is that the net gain is significantly more than whatever the cost is, and therefore, from a policy reason, we are going to reject any recovery under these circumstances. I think it's an interesting case simply because it asks you to start, and this is going to be for next week, because the rest of this week's cases really are on different family law issues that I want you to think about. But how do we start to value the difficult damage case? Because, we can talk about it in here, but at some point when you try a case, you've got to put in evidence of the loss. At some point, if you're trying this case, the cost is relatively easy as to how you would be looking at it. Frankly, I understand your arguments about the general cost. General cost, though, is not necessarily going to show by a preponderance of the evidence that that's the damage this family suffered. So I think you almost have to get a little more specific if you're going to introduce what the likely cost of raising this child is than just generalities as to what it costs, across Massachusetts, because frankly, probably costs more in Essex County than it would cost out in the Berkshires. And so to some extent, as a plaintiff, your obligation is to show more likely than not these are the damages you've suffered. I think, as you've pointed out, what are we going to do in the offset? Because while the costs, we can really probably come up with a variety of ways to introduce evidence on those issues, and you'd need to introduce evidence on those issues. What are we going to do with respect to the individual items where we say, well, this kid's of value, and it's harder to value the smile than the emotional distress. But at some point, we've got to put in economic valuations for what that child brings to the family. And I'm not certain how to do it either. But if I'm getting a credit and I'm representing the doctor, we've got to figure that out. Maybe it's some level of expert testimony, sociologists and the like, to bring in and say, this is what the studies show people favor and why, and blah, 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 blah. But then as some of you pointed out, well, what if those kids rotten, right?
And that's the parenting.
Huh? Well, good. Yeah, it usually is. That's right. That's our fault too. I think I'm going to end here on this case simply because instead of opening up the new case, we'll talk about that the next time. Any other questions on the case? Okay, I'll see you on Thursday.